What up, what up, what up? What's going on, my best ball family? Look at this. One of the first comments. Seasonal leagues. Come on, it's still best ball season. I literally just did a show yesterday with Corain and Daigle with the NBC Sports Edge crew, which was a lot of fun. If you didn't watch, if you haven't checked it out, had a really fun conversation with Daigle and Corain. Love talking to those guys. Super, super sharp. But I guess this is exactly why we had to plan the happy hour after I talked to the corporate folks at NBC, and they're like done with best ball. Right? I see Underdog in the chat too. People are trying to write off best ball, right? All these other sites are it's seasonal time, right? And instructing people on their home leagues, and that has to be done too. I play in my fair share of home leagues and season long leagues. But it's still best ball season. Don't let the people fool you. So yeah, thanks for joining. I'm excited to do something like a little bit more laid back and just like, let's just go with the flow. That's actually how I try to do like just about every show that I do. Usually some sort of like subject topic, but even like the show with Davis, or I used to do shows with Blender. We just like, let's just go hop on the StreamYard, hit record, or hit live and just start talking. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. We get to the middle of the week, there's so much freaking content, and especially this time of the year, it's like it's crazy, man. Like we've talked about the same thing, right? I talked about Antonio Gibson again. We have to defend Antonio Gibson for the 200th consecutive day. And people can say the same things. We have to say the same things. We get into this monotonous routine. We're like overloaded with content. And I'm like this, galaxy brain type person. I'm trying to like question everything. We get to this point in the draft season where it's like I'm questioning everything, and everything that has been like a crux of my strategy. It's really easy to just, when you do this best ball thing, right? It's a very repetitive process doing these drafts. It's easy to fall into traps or whatever, or overthink things. So it's a good thing to do to kind of relax and take a step back away from grinding preseason, grinding 5 preseason snaps, or thinking about all these galaxy brain draft ideas. Is to pour a drink, relax a little bit, and let's just shoot the shit and hang out. We can talk about all things best ball. We can talk about anything that floats anybody's boat. You guys know me by now. There's plenty of rambling and ranting that I'll be able to do over the course of an hour, or however long we want to hang out and have a couple cocktails. I see Valair, the ship chasing maestro, the true zero RB truther, in the chat. I know, Valair, you've had a mojito poured probably for 2 hours already. I see your mojito tweets. I see them. I'm just drinking a little bit. I like whiskey. Whiskey ginger ale is like my go-to, just kind of casual hangout drink. Not too much praise. If you don't follow Erik Beimfohr, Beimfohr is your Twitter handle, just your name, at Erik Beimfohr on Twitter. If you're listening or watching, and you don't follow Beimfohr, he's a must follow for this space. Yeah, at Erik Beimfohr, obviously of ship chasing fame. Nick, what's going on? Nick, another super sharp guy. Nick, I've seen you in chat a lot, and I think I learned something from you every time on one of these shows. That's what people don't realize. I started this site. I started diving into best ball, probably not even because I think I have some sort of crazy edge, or I am really passionate about best ball, but it's just selfish to learn from you guys. I don't have all the answers. I just fire up a stream, get these smart people piling in, telling me the answers to the test. Right? Yesterday, I think it was 2 days. Yeah, I can't keep my day straight. This is why we need happy hour. But somebody is pitching the Noah Gray Galaxy Brain Travis Kelce handcuff in the 18th round of underdog drafts, and I'm like, holy shit, that's genius. Why haven't I been doing that? So it's kind of the point of this whole community and this specific show, the specific stream, whatever you want to call it. Over time, we'll bring on some some guests and whatnot. What are my thoughts on Trey Lance? It is funny with Lance. It's like we get to, again, he's Antonio Gibson, right? He's the guy. I think anyone that you probably like respect in the space can see the reasons why people would like Trey Lance and why people would like Antonio Gibson. If they can't see it, they're kind of just being stubborn, it's probably like really disingenuous analysis. Whether you like those guys as much as me or as much as some other people, like, that's totally fine. I mean, I just said, I just talked to Daigle yesterday, and he's more on, like, say, CEH versus Gibson, and I'm like, why not both? I like both guys. I prefer Gibson a little bit more, but now we're in this, market. Gibson has kind of gotten a little expensive. If you follow Rich Rebar, which I'm sure that you guys all do, one of the most brilliant fantasy analysts out there, he was posting like yesterday, kind of, have we gotten too far ahead of ourselves with Antonio Gibson? Like, especially if you play on like FFPC, like the ship chasing guys had to take him 12th overall or whatever in one draft. Because if you want to get Antonio Gibson in those formats, if you're as bullish on him as I am and as some other people are, like those guys, like, you do have to really, really, really invest, right? They had to take him and sacrifice one or both of Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs, or it could have been sacrificing George Kittle. And so, especially in those formats, like some of these more traditional seasonal formats, like, I totally get, like, this thing may have run away from us a little bit with Antonio Gibson. However, in best ball, I think he still makes sense kind of where he's going, but people try to make it too much about these individual players. So this is actually a really, really good and fun question. I'm kind of interested on you guys take. So I'm gonna get to the Noah Gray. We're not gonna get to this, Chris. Come on. I'm as galaxy brained as it gets, but come on. But like, it's not about any of these specific players, right? I think that's the thing that gets lost in this a lot of the time, is like, I like Antonio Gibson because of the like archetype of what he represents as a best ball asset. Like, he's one of the few guys, like, say whatever we want about Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon, probably even maybe Najee. I guess some people might disagree with me on Najee. Like, I don't see how they go in the top 3 next year. I don't see how they're up at the top of the first round next year. They could improve, but I don't know how they go, but Gibson has that. Will he pay it off? I don't know. I mean, the probability says no, but I still want to invest in those kind of guys. And like, we get lost on like, oh, it's Antonio Gibson. Oh, let's look at these 11 preseason snaps. And really, it's just about trying to find the guys that can win us $1 million. That's all. And that's all that Trey Lance is. Trey Lance could be terrible. I don't know. But he also fits this mold of a player that can win me a lot of money. And that's really all I'm trying to do, is win a lot of money. So this is a fun, actually, kind of thought exercise. Kelsey versus Adams versus Hill versus Diggs, because that has become, if you don't get 101 or 102 and you're a little bit similar to me and you are a little bit skittish on that next tier of running backs, I'm forcing myself a little bit to mix in, actually not Henry, but mix in Kamara, even when I was really out on Kamara. But I just don't want to have 0. I mix in a little bit of Zeke. I take a little bit of Eckler later, whatever. But you have this decision, depending on where you're drafting, between Kelsey, Hill, Adams, and Diggs. And I think you could make a case for all of them. And I think a lot of smart people have made cases for all of these different guys as like, even like your 103. What I've really started to like So I was Kelsey 2 months ago. I was like, oh yeah, it's Travis Kelce because of the wide receiver, depth isn't the right word, but I knew that I would still be able to hammer wide receiver. I can even take my single elite running back, obviously, or go zero running back, and I can still have a crazy talented, crazy high quality, high upside roster. I'm an underdog now. I almost feel like it's one of the wide receivers, and my take is I kind of rotate through them. I think Diggs is my favorite, which I think he might be third to other people, but Sean Siegel has made an incredible case for Tyreek Hill in that we know Tyreek Hill is this crazy high efficiency player and big play upside player. And now given the state of the Chiefs offense with Demarcus Robinson and the more we see of Mecole Hardman, I'm really not even sure that he can play. And so there's not a lot of target competition for Tyreek Hill. And so now you could start to see volume that Tyreek Hill has never gotten before, combined with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, combined with his big play upside. And now he's rivaling anyone in the league from a volume perspective, and he's still Tyreek Hill, right? I love Davante Adams. Davante Adams is one of the best wide receivers maybe ever, but he doesn't bring the game-breaking type of archetype that Tyreek Hill is. And so he gets there through volume and touchdowns, which is great. I mean, it's why he's a stud. But yeah, I mean, Tyreek could surpass 150 targets. I really think we haven't seen what the true ceiling is for Tyreek Hill. Another thing that Reeves has mentioned, it was mostly in context to DFS in the past. He was like, Tyreek has largely been kind of a floor play, for his cost. Where he hasn't, he did it last year, and he's done it a couple of times. He did it against the Bucks, especially last year, but he's been a little bit of a floor play because defenses are so cognizant of Tyreek Hill that he ends up catching a lot more kind of underneath passes and catching 6 or 7 balls every week. And now you just need some touchdowns, maybe a big play here or there. But I think there's potential for Tyreek to kind of all the worlds to collide for Tyreek. And then I just personally like Diggs because I think he is kind of that already for the Bills. He is the high volume guy. We saw Ben Gretch has made incredible points about what happened to Diggs as the season went along with Josh Allen, just really leaning on Stephon Diggs. And all he really needs is some touchdowns. Devontae scored 18 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs scored 8. That was the difference between the two of them. So I don't think you can really go wrong. Long-winded way of saying I'm kind of mixing through all these guys. I think being stubborn on Kelce, Hill, Adams, Diggs is the wrong way to go about this. I think you want access to all of those guys. It's kind of the same reason of being stubborn on a first-round running back is bad, or being stubborn on taking for a first-round running back, not any one of them specifically, is bad because you're losing access to those 4 guys. And again, we talked about this yesterday with Corain and Daigle that we're attached to this idea that the league winner has to be a running back because Kamara did the 6 touchdown thing last year. We saw CMC 2 years ago, whatever. It's a lot of the times a running back, but in this new best ball format, what if we get to week 17, Tyreek Hill's facing the Bengals and Tyreek Hill scores 4 touchdowns, or Stephon Diggs does, or Davante Adams does, and a running back doesn't do that. Well, you needed to spend your first round pick on Tyreek Hill, or Travis Kelce does it. You needed to spend your first round pick on Travis Kelce. So I love all those guys. Let's see what we got here, Hayden. Would you consider an RB5 overall season from round 2 Nick Chubb this week? Yeah, so Chubb is a really, really, really tough one for me because what I'll say is probably yes to answer this question. I would say probably yes. I would consider this a win. Because if you structure your team appropriately to where you're using his score every single week, and then he does kind of exceed with some spikes. The biggest issue with Chubb for me is I don't think he can even do he's Derrick Henry in terms of the archetype of player that he is, but he Assuming Kareem Hunt is not healthy, which is absolutely what I was going to pull up your comment, Hayden. Assuming Kareem Hunt is healthy, he just doesn't have access to that Kamara 6 touchdown game. He doesn't even have access to the Henry huge monster spikes. He has access to really good games, but not games where like, oh shit, I don't have Nick Chubb. Like I'm buried. So that's my biggest struggle. However, we haven't seen Chubb without Hunt. We haven't seen I don't think Chubb is an incapable receiver. And that's the other thing is like, he doesn't catch passes. That is mostly true as just a function of their offense and a function of having Kareem Hunt, and a function of Baker Mayfield and their run game, setting up more shots, whatever. But like, what if Hunt goes down? He can play. Like, I think he's not Derrick Henry where like he looks incredibly uncomfortable trying to catch passes and run routes, right? I think Chubb he's actually made some fairly decent plays in the receiving game, and I think he has the ability to do it. They just don't use him that way. And so if Hunt goes down, I think Chubb has this kind of contingent value too. It's like it's similar to Gibson, right? In that Gibson needs to earn this greater role that we think he can do in a fairly decent offense. He has the skill set, he has the upside as a player, blah, blah, blah. He just needs to earn it through talent and through the coaches kind of letting him have it. The Browns won't just give it to Chubb, even though he can probably do it. But if something happens to Hunt, they might give it to him. And then he's probably the RB3, 2. He's not CMC, obviously, but he's close to Dalvin, maybe better than Dalvin. Like we at least start to discuss him at that point. So I've thought about that a lot with Chubb too. He's a really, really interesting use case. Here's my issue with Aaron Jones. He also would require to really reach that level. He like we were just talking about with Chubb, he also would require an injury to A.J. Dillon, in my opinion. Even then, they have never shown a willingness to make him like a workhorse and a every down back, right? He's a lot more similar to Alvin Kamara, little bit different usage, but that kind of a player, incredible actual football player, has all the tools. Great. He's probably a better runner than Kamara is, like especially between the tackles, and a great receiver out of the backfield. Probably not quite as good of a receiver as Kamara, but he has all of that ability. I'm not sure it's ever in the cards for him to get everything that we need. And there's definitely perks to his running mate now being A.J. Dillon versus his running mate being Jamal Williams, because Jamal Williams got a lot more passing work and even like 2-minute drill stuff, which we know how valuable that is. So that's a big boost. On the flip side, Dillon could take away maybe even more volume. Now it might be a little bit of some empty carries, maybe closing out games. Like, who are you going to use? 200-pound Aaron, you're up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Who are you going to use? Aaron Jones to run out the clock between the tackles, or this Derrick Henry light monster of a human in A.J. Dillon? So that's not huge for fantasy, but what that also could mean is goal line. If we know this offense is really good and going to score a lot of points, and he has really crushed with that. Aaron Jones has. And so if you add a couple passes, but you remove a lot of touchdown equity, that's bad. That actually really hurts him. So I struggle with Aaron Jones. I think, it was very sharp for people that got on him when his price really kind of cratered to the end of the second round, because I think he was undervalued, but I still don't see him necessarily as like the guy that can ever be, that has a season named after him, that is just a guy that you had to have, right? I don't think CMC level production is ever in the cards for him. Let's see. Let me scroll through some stuff. Sorry, I need a drink. You guys are killing me. Yeah, but to finish up the Chubb thing, it's like Gibson can get there if McKissick gets hurt too, just like Chubb can get there if Hunt gets hurt. Gibson, in my opinion, can grow more into it because it's just like there's uncertainty, and he was. That's what he does best. That's what's always been the confusing thing with Gibson, and that's why he's this weird, funny bet. It's like he was a freaking college wide receiver. He did get some carries here and there, but like he was basically a college wide receiver. His best asset is actually that of a pass catcher, whereas Chubb is just the superstar runner. Maybe best runner in the league. Let's take a look. But so this is on the wide receiver Kelsey thing. I would take one of the wide receivers for a redraft between those 4 first round pass catchers. One thing that I would say, depending on where you're picking, again, I don't take, this is just me and my opinions. Don't take my redraft advice. Talk to like people like Hayden are better at redraft. Definitely the NBC guys, the ship chasing guys, all these guys are far better. Stealing bananas guys, far better at redraft than I am. But my opinion would be, I would also kind of try to read my room. It's possible. Like if you're picking closer to the end of the first round, you might be able to get Diggs in the second round. In which case, like if I take Tyreek and I can get Diggs in the second, I would be, I would love that. But Diggs is personally my favorite out of all those guys. Let's see. Is there anyone relevant that you're fully fading, 0 exposure, and will not draft? Yeah. And to your second question, there are not a lot of guys. If you're drafted in the top X amount of rounds, I probably have at least like a sprinkle. Let me think about some guys I'm totally out on. We talked in chat the other day. If you're in the Discord frequently, I'm not drafting Tom Brady. And quarterback is a little bit unique because of the pocket passers. Like it's not that I won't ever draft a pocket passer. It's just that the cost on some of the guys like Brady, like Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan falls a little bit now, but he's in a similar bucket that like it's really, really hard for them to pay me off at their cost without any running. And Brady, we're paying for the pass production and the perceived floor. And I can just get floor from that passing game through his weapons and search for a guy that I think can actually, usually with his legs, find some real big time upside. Let's see here. Yeah, this is a good question. So, I mean, I think it's my preferred approach. That's what I'll go into, I guess, because I don't want to, this is a involved question and answer. But how I'm spending equity on the running back position, if I had it like my dream about it way to build a team, is what we would call a hero RB, single elite RB, modified zero RB, whatever, and take basically some form of an anchor, another name. I'm sure there's other names for it too. Take some form of an anchor that's my RB1. That's the bet I've made on this guy being the legendary running back of the year, right? The guy, like, again, using Antonio Gibson, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire really does play every snap. He's a workhorse for the Chiefs. That's a guy that we're taking in the top 5 next year, or who knows? I mean, the upside is crazy, especially with the offensive line improvements that they've made. Maybe they do run a little bit more, whatever, right? Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the guy that I take in the second round after I took Diggs or Devontae or whatever in the first round. And now I'm basically punting off the RB2 position, where like my opponents in theory maybe gain a little bit of points from me at RB2, but I'm embracing the fragility of the position at that RB2 spot, right? The perfect example that has already happened in this draft season was Cam Akers, right? So draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire and then stockpile, lottery tickets. Maybe you mix in James White, or you mix in Giovanni Bernard, or you mix in even like Gus Edwards or somebody like that can kind of get you by. You're not getting a ton of points from that guy, but you're not posting a 0. And then you draft Darrell Henderson, and you draft Tony Pollard and Alexander Madison and Chuba Hubbard, Darrington Evans, Damian Williams, blah, 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 right? But these guys that are a little bit more contingent value players, but also relatively low draft costs. And so now I can win at basically every other position is my bet. I'm definitely smashing you at the wide receiver. I'm using that wide receiver depth to smash you at the flex. And I have assumed that I've found this elite RB1. And now I'm just letting the kind of variance of the season and the variance of the running back position play out over however many weeks, right? Maybe even I don't find the Cam Akers thing, but I just get some spikes here and there, right? If people remember, Malcolm Brown scored 2 touchdowns in week 1 of last year for the Rams. Random stuff like that happens. Or I happen to stumble into Darrell Henderson, and now I just have this super team because I'm smashing you at every position now. So that's like my general, like I said, if I had it to do, but you have to kind of play it by ear, and I'm not entirely stubborn with structure. Just going back, making sure I try to hit on some of these. I'm still pretty out on Kamara, and maybe I think I'm being a little stubborn on the Saints, but I have been convinced a little bit by some smarter people that, it's a little hypocritical of me to be on upside bets and guys that can have the dream about its ceiling. Even though I'm low on the Saints, it doesn't mean I'm right. And it doesn't mean that Kamara doesn't get so much volume in both on the ground and through the pass game that he can be, when 2 years ago when CMC was smashing, the Panthers weren't good. And so it doesn't mean that Kamara can't have the 1,000 season. So I agree with this. I do not think Kylan Hill gets a role in the Green Bay backfield, but I think as the season goes on, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Aaron Jones gets hurt. I mean, he's back in practice, but he's already gotten hurt. Like if AJ Dillon were to go down, if Aaron Jones goes down, I actually think Kylan Hill would get some passing work. But even if AJ Dillon goes down, I think Kylan Hill might mix in a little bit because of what I said earlier about Aaron Jones. I don't think that they want him to play 100% of snaps. So this is same thing with Chubb. These teams definitely kind of overpay for these running backs. But one thing that I do think specifically, the Chubb one is a little bit interesting. I do think they should use him a bit in the passing game, but they're very committed to this scheme, that they're running the 2 running back things, and Chubb is just an absolutely monster on the ground and kind of drives their whole system. But I don't think it's having weapons. So the whole running back doesn't matter thing, right? Came about a lot with Saquon. And I was like maybe 5 years ago or something, was like the real stubborn, like, oh my God, you drafted a running back early, or you drafted a running back in the first round. You're an idiot. He's a running back, and lumped every running back in together. I think as we've moved and the game of football, especially in the pros, has grown a little bit, I treat these guys a little bit more like offensive weapons. And so it's like, do you want Saquon Barkley on your team? Like, do you want Saquon Barkley to have the ball? Like, now if you use him wrong, that's a very different situation. If you used CMC and didn't throw him the ball, that would be bad. If you don't throw Saquon Barkley the ball, if you don't, if you just hammer these guys between the tackles, that's on you. But I think paying Aaron Jones and then still like spelling him and using him, for all the high value touches, throwing in the ball, using his, he's an explosive player. But mixing in, I wouldn't use a second round pick on AJ Dillon, but mixing in a guy like Dillon so that Jones is fresh and you're using Jones in the appropriate ways, right? That's what the Saints do with Kamara. And I don't think it's unreasonable. Let's see. This is true. The unfortunate thing doing content now is my league mates know how I play and they listen to the stuff that I'm doing. They listen, and I can't get away with some of the stuff I used to be able to get away with. I got my home leagues starting up, and I just been in a dynasty league with a lot of my high school buddies since, trying to think, I'm 33. I was a sophomore in high school, so whatever that is, 15. So 18, more than half my life I've been in this dynasty league. We had the rookie draft on Sunday. And so I had no shot at getting Trey Lance, right? I had no shot at getting some of the guys that I wanted because they all know the guys that I'm on. I tried to trade for Darrington Evans, and the guy's like, nope, I need a first round rookie pick for Darrington Evans if I want to get him. So my leagues have gotten smarter. Probably not. They might be getting dumber because they're listening to me, but they're less running back thirsty than the average home league. Yes, DK has. If you want to look, I actually think one of the better pieces that I've done this offseason, I still have to finish up the underdog one and post it. I can hold on. Let me actually just share my screen really quick. Excuse me. Share screen. If you go to spikeweek.com and we go to draft guides, so I have all of these kind of different things to use for drafting, obviously rankings and such. But I put together, I've done more than 300 underdog drafts and about 200 DraftKings drafts and I don't know 40 drafters drafts or something like that. And so I feel like I have a good feel for kind of each site and kind of the nuance to the best strategy for each of them, which I'm not going to go into all that, but you can read it here. But some of that is the scoring differences. So for DraftKings here, you see obviously it has 20 rounds, but they use their DFS scoring, which is not only full PPR, but there's these yardage bonuses, which also come into play from a strategy perspective. So won't bore you with that, but this one's interesting, Belair. I was gonna get to Swift. I think I got distracted, right? I got talking about this is a fun conversation actually. The guys you're totally out on and you're willing to take zero of, because there's really not that many of those guys, I don't think. Swift, I was absolutely out on Swift. I mean, I'm completely out on the Lions. Completely out on the Lions. They are going to be so bad. And if you watch the preseason game, like an 18-yard drive or an 18-play drive or whatever it was that goes like 40 yards and they kick a field goal and Goff it was bad. Oh my God, it was so bad. And Swift, we're not getting like it's still a long way away. I'm totally certain Swift is going to be fine. Well, I don't want to say I'm certain. I feel normal that Swift is going to be fine, but we're not getting any positive news. We actually got a little bit more negative news today that he kind of took a step back, which is certainly concerning. Like I said, not super worried, but I'm just so out. I'm so out on the Lions offense. I'm out on Anthony Lynn. We have a small injury concern. And so I was pretty much out on Swift too. Listening to some smart folks, Corain, Siegel, Gretsch, Peter, listening to some of these guys talk about Swift and just, betting on an efficient player, an efficient running back that catches passes, that is a very good player, was a very good prospect. What is supposed to be a good offensive line. That was the other thing that was a little concerning. If you watch that game, they're supposed to have this, like the offensive line is like, that's their one strength. They have one strength on the entire roster, on their whole roster, any position group, it's offensive line. They were awful. They got their asses kicked in that preseason game. Now, again, I'm not taking that into account yet. It's not a concern, but it is, if we're going to talk about Gibson not playing third downs, we can at least talk about the fact that the Lions offensive line got worked. Listen, Overzet is he's a fantasy football comedian, fantasy football comedy hour, but he's grown and he is a trusted resource. He's a person that I listen to. He'll even say he doesn't like have necessarily player takes, but what I like about what Overzet has done, and it's really my approach to like all these players, is not necessarily having player takes. Like I'm not like I do actually. I'm a big football guy. I rewatch the games and stuff, but I'm not doing it so much so as to be like, I think X player is good. I think X player is bad. I'm not trying to be a scout. I'm not trying to like even like really project them forward, but I am trying to create like player archetypes. And I want to have the guys that I can like drop in these buckets so that I know, like that's Antonio Gibson and CEH. These guys are guys that I drop into like these upside buckets. And I think I should have put Swift at least close to that bucket before. So I have taken him a little bit. I much prefer him on DraftKings. And he's also oddly falling more on DraftKings than say on Underdog. The opposite of Derrick Henry. The opposite of Derrick Henry. My favorite thing about Derrick Henry is that he hasn't burned us if you've been fading like me. He hasn't really burned us. It was not very fun last year, but it wasn't like, again, I always use this, like, oh my God, it's over. I don't have Derrick Henry. It wasn't that. You preferred to have Dalvin. You preferred to have Kamara. You know why? Because they caught passes. And they can't really get scripted out of games. And Derrick Henry does actually get scripted out of games a lot less than people think, because the Titans are very stubborn. But you know what I mean. And I just think all the worlds have collided for Derrick Henry in terms of this is the season where the regression is the most likely to hit. Doesn't mean it will. He's a unicorn, but it's the most likely to hit because of, just not catching passes eventually does kind of catch up to you. And their offense has lost Arthur Smith. Now they added Julio Jones, which is very nice, obviously. But what is it? 850 carries or whatever it is over the last 2 seasons, even as much of a mutant as he is, he's still human. The defense continues to get worse. There's just a lot, like we're really stacking up these negative factors. So I'm just preferring to bet on the other. I want, and in turn, if Henry fails, there's a lot to gain from the other Titans. So that's just a bet I want to make. I think that's, there's a lot more EV in that bet, I think. Let's see what I missed. Cop-out answer, Hayden, a combination of both. That's what I actually think this offseason has been really fun on Underdog, because we've been able to have Best Ball Mania. That there's a lot of extra strategy in a tournament that goes the entire offseason. There's perks to getting in early. There's there's risk and downside to drafting early. There's perks to getting in late, and there's major cons to drafting late, like competing against Darrell Henderson, like knowing you're competing against third round Devontae Adams, late second round Aaron Jones. There's pros. There's a lot of little additional layers to the strategy in that tournament, and I really like that. However, I also really like, Puppy 1, Puppy 2, Puppy 3 might last a little bit longer because it's the most absurdly huge, crazy tournament I've ever seen. There's interesting, strategies to a tournament that is only going to last like a week. And like, I wanted to draft Darrell Henderson. I was screaming from the mountaintops more about Darrell Henderson even than like Trey Lance and Antonio Gibson. And having those follow-up tournaments allows you to still get access to what might be the best pick of the draft. But like in Best Ball Mania 2, I don't feel like it's smart to attack that guy. So I kind of like the combination of both. If that is not a sufficient answer, you can email eric@spikeweek.com with your concerns, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Let's see. This was kind of funny. I'm trying to get CSU on. I'm trying to get CSU. He's busy, man. He's minting every new avatar project. I see. This is kind of how I feel, but I'm not to the point about fading, I keep getting away. You guys know me and like rambling and getting on tangents, but this is actually how I feel. But I'm trying not to be completely stubborn on my Lions take. Same thing with my Texans take, which I'm going to get to in a second. I think there's at least reasonable cases to be made for DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson, and then Jamal Williams, as gross as it feels, as kind of a 0 RB mid-round target that has a little bit of standalone value and extra contingent value. I think those guys are guys I'm sprinkling in. They are not stands for me, and if we're using underweight and overweight, I would be underweight the Lions. Same, a little bit of Amon-Ra St. Brown just because of the rookie thing, and I think he's a fine player. But that's about it. But I'm not overweight, certainly, any Lions. And then as it comes to the Texans, when we're talking about stands and guys you're okay being out on, zero. I have 0 Brandon Cooks. I will never draft Brandon Cooks. I couldn't possibly be more comfortable. I never even think about taking Brandon Cooks. I don't want to draft like you talked, Belair, you brought up, the Lions and like those guys having no upside. I mean, the Lions are significantly better than the Texans, right? This is like the Texans wish they had Jared Goff at quarterback. And I think Jared Goff is absolutely horrid. We're talking about Tyrod Taylor, an old Tyrod Taylor, and Davis Mills, who like a lot of people aren't really sold that was even a good prospect. And it's a bunch of Jags, a bunch of journeyman guys. And Brandon Cooks is priced there just because of this projectable volume idea, which you guys have heard me talk about too many times. But like we're banking on him being the wide receiver 1 for the Texans. But it's kind of like the Mike Davis of wide receivers. When I start to think about the season, that could be wrong. Brandon Cooks has never been a target dominant player. He's a good football player, but he's never been a target dominant player. I mean, he's 5'9", he's little, right? He's smaller than Tyreek. He's never been a target dominant player. And so now you put a guy who, is a big play player, never really a truly target dominant player on the worst offense in the league, with the worst quarterback situation in the league. He's aging. And, I start to think about the trajectory of the season. And the Texans they might not win a game. They're definitely not going to win very many games. And you start to think about, as the season goes on, is Brandon Cooks going to get better? I need my 8th round picks to be ascending in the fantasy playoffs, not getting DNP CDs, And so, but that in turn, I'm like, okay, well, who benefits from that? Well, Nico Collins, right? Nico Collins. So I am drafting Nico Collins. Like I would literally, this is me being dramatic, but I would just about almost straight up rather have Nico Collins than Brandon Cooks as it pertains to this tournament. When you think about the format of what we need on drafters, if I'm comparing the two, Brandon Cooks definitely, the week 1 counts just as much as week 17. So it's a little bit different. But like on Underdog and on DraftKings, I just don't get it with Brandon Cooks. But on the contrary, on the opposite, I really like Nico Collins. Oh, DK just dropped a new tournament. Let's see. $6 and a decent payout structure. Let's be April Fools. We're talking about DraftKings. They don't have decent payout structures. Yeah, Hayden, earmuffs if you're still listening. I will say Underdog will always be my favorite. The platform, because the platform is just incredible. I think everyone with a reasonable mind can understand why we all love Underdog. But also, at the end of the day, we are also trying to make money, and I would not be doing my job if I did not, recommend to people. If I did not recommend to people to take advantage of the softer sites in terms of our competition, and it's just flat out true that DraftKings is outrageously soft, and so, oh wow, you are not kidding. 500,000 total prize pool, 100K to first. Let's take a look. Yeah, 100K, 50K, 30K. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. All right. Not the first time, won't be the last. Not the first time, won't be the last. Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is it, right? At the end of the day, I mean, I do this for a living, and so I'm chasing EV where I can, but there's also a certain part of like an enjoyable experience, and that's what underdog brings, right? I'm willing to accept some of the competition, the stiffer competition, and the more efficient market. That also creates different. Like everybody's playing within this more efficient market, so just the fact that I can't create super teams like I can on drafters is actually sharper too. If you play on drafters, I kind of call it the middle ground. It's not quite underdog, but it's definitely more efficient than DraftKings. The app lags behind underdog for sure, and the desktop experience on underdog is much better. But yeah, the everything about underdog is just a more enjoyable experience. When the user experience is better, that brings you more of a sense of enjoyment, even though that your competition is tougher. So in turn, that makes some of these other sites very plus EV. You can build teams that you just can't build. It's just so like if you're taking this serious and you're playing a fair bit, like I would just be playing across all the sites. Like my more of my volume is on underdog than on any site. But like I said, I would be, I would not be doing my job if I didn't say like, we need to look at these other sites. Moss. I think Moss is a pretty interesting guy. Moss was kind of like a guy I was trying to take a stand on early in this season, like really before I knew what I was like. You just start to have all these thoughts very, very, in April and May. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Zach Moss season. But, if I'm the same thing, I'm envisioning the season, I'm envisioning a breakout and one of these backs like really taking over the backfield. And I've said this a bunch of times on a bunch of different shows. Like, I don't really there's no reason to believe that the Bills will necessarily change anything they do with Josh Allen at the goal line. But it's also a reasonable take, in my opinion, that when you spend what $300 million or whatever it is they spent on Josh Allen, like maybe let's not run him at the goal line so much and meaningless get they were trying to win last year in the regular season. And of course they're going to try to win this year in the regular season, but they've established a certain caliber, of team. They're pretty damn certain that they're going to make the playoffs. And so these regular season touchdowns at the goal line, it's like, well, maybe let's see if we can just use Zach Moss down there. I could see that happening to Zach Moss. I could see Zach Moss stumbling into a really big touchdown season because, Josh Allen only runs for 3 touchdowns instead of 8. I think he had 8 last year. And Zach Moss takes on a bigger share of that work. And I think we're really latched on to this idea that the Bills backfield isn't valuable because of how they use these guys last year and because of that goal line thing with Josh Allen. But I don't want to be tied to that idea. And so the guy, I actually, Devin Singletary is kind of like has turned into this like stand for me because he's so damn cheap. He's so cheap on like all sites, but even still on underdog, he's still cheap on underdog. And so like, that's going to sound counterintuitive. Like I have more Devin Singletary than I have Zach Moss. But in Dynasty, I would definitely be on Zach Moss, and I actually want to make Zach Moss a decent bet. A decent bet that I'm making. Yeah, I haven't dabbled in FFPC yet. I talked to Leone not that long ago. He's posted some FFPC drafts, and I'm just like, good Lord, man. How do you draft? How did you get all these guys on your team? Who are your opponents taking? It looks like a DraftKings draft at much higher stakes. And so I haven't been able to get to, there are only 24 hours in a day, and money, like I don't have infinite money. I don't have infinite time or infinite money. So I haven't made my way to FFPC yet, but I think I probably need to. This is hilarious. We do need to talk about this. Every guy that Josh talks up, I love Josh. Josh is one of my favorite people in this entire space. So let's get that out of the way first. But everybody that Josh talks up is like not moving up in ADP. Or even if they do move up in ADP, bad news starts coming. Troutman, right? He was on Troutman, and like I think it was a totally reasonable take. Being on a potential, and Troutman used to go. I mean, it was way too late for where he was going. And now it's like, Troutman might just be the blocking tight end. Jawan Johnson is the passing back, or the passing tight end. So it's pretty funny. He can't get Damian Harris to write. Every show is the Damian Harris tout from Josh, and he can't get his ADP up. I think it might be going back down too. I'm not really on Dobbins. If Dobbins were cheaper, I would be buying. It's really, really tough for him to, he's in a range, and that's what people maybe miss sometimes about cost, like on these running backs. It's that what you need from a running back is probably more than what people think in those early rounds because of the opportunity cost. Because you'll reach a certain point at wide receiver where like the wide receiver bets aren't very good, right? Like you get to Brandon Cooks in the 8th or 9th round, and it's like these wide receivers aren't very good anymore. So then you take your Raheem Mostert shot or whatever, or Damian Harris. Josh would take his Damian Harris shot, right? Or AJ Dillon, something like that. Because the opportunity, those guys are worse bets than J.K. Dobbins, of course, but the opportunity cost is not anywhere near what we're talking about when you're taking J.K. Dobbins in the 3rd round, even the 4th round. That's still like the elites at wide receiver, like really good tight ends, all the elite quarterbacks, right? And so that's my struggle is like, I mean, Dobbins is going to have a good season. Like you can take that to the bank, but like, is it a fantasy season that I want at his cost? I think it's really, really hard. He doesn't have very many paths to where I'm like, man, I don't have J.K. Dobbins. We're in trouble. Let's see what we got here. This is my father. Must have missed that Tebow got cut. What an abomination Tim Tebow is. Did you see those blocks? I could do that. I could do better than that. And I was just an ankle biter. I didn't hit anybody. I was an ankle biter, and I could block better than Tebow. Yeah, I see Hayden is leaving. Hayden's about to do a stream himself, I believe. Which we need to, everybody, whenever you're done here, go watch Hayden's stream solo, because Josh abandoned him as he's moving. Yeah, I like this. It's good. That's a good take. Good question. Good question, Lauren. Daniel Jones is one that I struggle with, and I try to set apart my takes on the team context and his skill set from true like fantasy upside. Last year was definitely a shit show. You're absolutely right, but he has had some huge weeks. 2 years ago, one of my biggest DFS weeks that I had was I played Daniel Jones against Washington. I forget who the backup tight end was that Ingram was out, and I forget who the backup tight end was. But Jones is a difficult. I would make my case. I've kind of planted my flag that I prefer Sam Darnold to Daniel Jones, and I think I would say that Taysom Hill has more upside. And I actually think it's possible that whoever wins the Denver job has more upside. Now, we don't know who that is. And I don't particularly like Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater like as a player. But you can make a case now, and they don't run, right? But we're drafting Trey Lance really high, largely because he runs, but he's being dropped into a good offense with elite weapons. And the Denver situation also should be a pretty good offense with elite weapons, right? Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, Javonte Williams, and say whatever we want about Melvin Gordon, but he's at least serviceable. And those quarterbacks there are undrafted. So I just struggle with Daniel Jones. I see the rushing. I see 2 years ago, like you said, there was reason to buy a little bit, but I think there's a lot stacked up against him in order to be a late round quarterback that you really want. And like I said, it's very possible I'm overvaluing that. I'm overvaluing Jason Garrett. I'm overvaluing Joe Judge. Offensive line is really bad, which is another issue. And they have weapons, but like they're okay. It's not like truly elite. Like Galladay is a very good player and Saquon's a very good player. Ingram's okay. I like Sterling Shepard. Fine. Darius Shepard. Shout out Darius Shepard. I don't know if he's still in the league. Darius Slayton is also fine. But none of these guys are like, this isn't the Cowboys. So I didn't answer your question technically, but Jones is definitely a guy. I have a little bit of Daniel Jones. I prefer Sam Darnold. I think Taysom has a little more upside, but Taysom might not win the job either. Zach Wilson, good call, Ken. I think Zach Wilson has more upside too. So I prefer these two guys to Daniel Jones. Basically, would be my stance. I also hope they have more upside than Daniel Jones. Otherwise, we're in trouble because I have a lot of Darnold and a lot of Wilson. Yep. Watson. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I can see it with Deshaun Watson. Maybe I'm being clouded by I'm an asshole, but I do have a moral compass. Maybe I'm being clouded by the fact that, what is happening all around Deshaun Watson. But I find it really, it's one thing to have a little bit of uncertainty, or like maybe if he was hurt and we were like, when exactly is he going to be back? It's another thing to be like, is this dude going to prison? So, and if he were a different position, like quarterback, the points are so replaceable. It's so hard for a quarterback to separate himself. Well, that's definitely true. That part is definitely true. All right, let's do a few more questions. I'll pour a refill and then we'll do a few more questions. And then I got to cook dinner. What are you guys drinking? Blair, what are you drinking? Are you really drinking a mojito or what is it that you're... Yeah, I really hope Darnold and Wilson are better bets than Daniel Jones, because I have an infinite amount more of Darnold and Wilson than I do Daniel Jones. This is tight end has been a whirlwind. I feel like on Underdog we went from this basically exactly what you're saying is what happened for me, Ken, is that I went from smashing Kelsey first round, and then I'm actually really, really underweight Waller. But I get the Waller thing. I'm overweight Kelsey, underweight Waller. It's tough to be like overweight all of them. But basically same premise. I was smashing the early round tight ends because the wide receivers, it wasn't how it is right now. Right. I could even back in early Underdog days, which is crazy to think about just how much it's changed. Love it. Love it. We'll have to come up with special recipe drinks for every Wednesday. But back in early Underdog days, when you could get Terrace Marshall in the 16th round or whatever, and now he's a 10th round pick. Back in early Underdog days, I could take my, hero RB strategy. I could take Kelsey in the first round. I could take Gibson in the second round. You could even take an elite quarterback and still have good wide receivers, and then take your later round running backs. Now, the moment you move away from wide receiver in the first 7 rounds, it's trouble. Like, you're in trouble. Like, it sounds crazy, but I'm not kidding. Terrace Marshall goes in the 10th round. I love Terrace Marshall. He's actually one of my higher exposure players across all sites. But Rondale used to go in the 14th. Terrace used to go in the 15th. Elijah is sometime going in the 8th round now. Like, I like all these guys, but they've moved up 5 rounds because everyone is taking wide receivers, which in turn means every time you take a detour early, like, you get in trouble. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's even puppy 1 is different, wildly different. I don't think people realize this. Now go look at like early Best Ball Mania 2. I'll see if I can find. Let's see if there's something that I got that we can look at. I also hate God. Some of my teams are so bad early on, but like the very earliest teams you drafted, like we look back and like, what world were we drafting in? Let me see. Oh no, we can't do that one. Michael Thomas team. It's also really funny because some of this ADP makes it look funny. But anyway, point being around tight ends, I take less of the elite tight ends than I took before, because it's just 2v2 isn't the right example, but Ken, from DFS examples or whatever, it ends up being this 2v2, 3v3 kind of game you start playing where you're like, okay, would I rather punt it off at tight end and actually have good wide receivers, or am I willing to go in with, I don't know, Sterling Shepard as my 5th wide receiver or whatever? Like, it becomes a really, really tricky conversation on underdog. Yeah, I mean, this is what's happening. This is the world that we live in now. This is the world that we live in. And every room is different. Yeah, that's like it's easy to like write a strategy article or like no shade on anybody, but like the perfect draft article or like how you should attack each round or whatever. It's really easy to like do that content based on ADP. And then you get in a draft room where everybody's smashing wide receiver. You get in a ship chasing draft where everybody's smashing wide receiver. You get in a ship chasing draft, the Piss Boys and Gormanji are in a draft, and all the wide receivers are gone by round 6. And you're like, oh, my perfect draft is Rondale Moore in the 11th. And then at 9:02, Rondale Moore is the best wide receiver available, and you only got 3 or 4 wide receivers. Like, what do you do? And so that's why, like, I go into all my underdog drafts now, basically. So funny. I go into all my underdog drafts now, like through 5 rounds. I want to have the best wide receivers in the room, basically. It doesn't always mean 5 wide receivers. Sometimes it could mean a tight end. Sometimes it could mean a single elite running back. But I really struggle with elite quarterbacks and elite tight ends. And like basically 2 of the 3. I think it's really hard to do 2 of the 3, which it didn't used to be hard to do 2 of the 3. Like, you could take Kelsey and you could take Gibson, or you could take Kelsey and you could take Josh Allen. Right, you could do 2 of the 3 things, 2 of the 3 detours to tight end, quarterback, or running back away from wide receiver, and still have a sick team. Even like a month and a half ago or whatever, before we ruined the ADPs, like you could do those things. You can't anymore. You can't anymore do those things. So it's tricky. You just have to play to these specific rooms, and underdog is such a unique beast. I even struggle to kind of like wrap my head around it, because it's like nothing we've ever seen before in fantasy football ever. And like all this best ball stuff is new to everyone. And then we've never seen anything like this market that's on best ball. This is actually my favorite, Ken. If you can get Henderson in the 4th in Puppy 3, not Best Ball Mania 2, if you can get Henderson in the 4th in the Puppy 3, I think you can still do it. I think. Well, I don't know what you think. I think it's reasonable to even possibly take 2 detours if you use Henderson as your single elite running back. So let's say you take Kelsey in the 1st, you go 2nd round wide receiver, 3rd round wide receiver, Henderson in the 4th, 5th round wide receiver. Or you go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, Henderson, quarterback, or tight end, right? Andrews or Hawkinson. I think if you push it to Henderson, you can probably still get away with taking 2 detours in the first 5 rounds. But when you do it in one of those first couple rounds, you'll be amazed at how quick it gets away from you. What do we got, John? I feel best about my team when I'm at 1, 2, 6. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Or even 1, 1, 7, 1. I would make those 2, but you're nailed it. 1, 2, 6, 1 or 1, 1, 7, 1 through 10 rounds is like, if I could dream about how I was going to start a draft, that's what I would do. Like 2, not necessarily even like 2 anchors. It could be 2 anchors if the draft falls to you right elsewhere. It could be 2 anchors. Henderson, Gibson, Henderson, CEH, Henderson, CMC, something like that, with an elite quarterback, borderline elite quarterback, and one of the top like 6 tight ends, and then all wide receivers. Yep. Definitely. I mean, if you don't have 5 wide receivers, that's the thing that I think on underdog specifically. If you don't have 5 receivers in the first 10 rounds, I'm all for, like, I believe in the hyper fragile approach, like the robust RB thing. Like, I mean, I like to like joke about it or whatever, but I think it is a really, really good strategy. But like when you read the room of underdog, if you don't have 5 in the first 10, I think you're really in trouble. Yeah, this is a really good point. I'm surprised they launched the other this $6, because the $5 is definitely gonna. So maybe they've read the room, they've read what underdog is doing, and the DK $5 is definitely going to fill. By the way, and they've seen it is the low dollar. So I might reach out to DraftKings and see what. Like, I just want to confirm before I fire more at the Millie on DraftKings that they're not going to screw us again with giving away tickets at the end. But I agree with this take, Jack. Totally. Chicken sandwiches. We're making at-home Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I got a good recipe for homemade Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I'm excited. Yeah, this is and like the robust RB people would tell you, like, that's okay. This is totally fine. Like you should, like you're embracing the fact that the wide receivers are going to make you sick. It's not my preference. I still don't really think it's optimal in the underdog room. And we've talked about this. You can get the benefits of hyperfragile, in my opinion, still in the market that exists on underdog, without going robust, right? Robust is a bunch of early running backs. You can still get the benefits of hyperfragile for running backs. Let's call it 4 running backs or 3, without screwing your wide receivers. You can still get a 2-4-10-2 structure on underdog, or 2-4-9-3 or whatever, without taking RB, and then having the worst wide receivers in the room. Like, I'm all for the idea of making up, not even just at wide receiver, at any position where you lack quality, making up for it in quantity is a reasonable approach. That's why hyperfragile works. But you can also push the boundaries of that at running back and embrace a little more variance and a little more fragility. It doesn't have to be RB, which I think is what people sometimes would disagree with. Yes, this is the answer. Why can't you start hyperfragile with Gibson? Like, what's the difference? Gibson, Henderson, Dillon, Darrington Evans. Gibson, Henderson, Rojo, Gus Edwards. We're just throwing out ideas. But ETN, yeah, same thing. Swift, ETN, Mostert, Dillon, or whatever. Like, why can't you can still get that? It's a more fragile, but that's okay. That's good. We're trying to. The whole point is you're embracing fragility. No, we buy it. We buy it, Belair. They sell it in stores. Or you can buy it from Chick-fil-A. I got the Chick-fil-A sauce. Yeah, this is the move. Hendo is the cheat code. Hendo is the cheat code, I promise. Yeah, so this is an awesome point, Eric. Literally did a draft little less than a week ago, with Ben Gretsch, zero RB truther of all zero RB truthers. The only person that's more of a truther than Ben is the actual creator of zero RB, his podcast host. And we got on a stream on DraftKings because I wanted to see someone like his mind work within the constructs of DraftKings ADPs in a DraftKings room. We got on DraftKings and we built a hyperfragile team. We started RB, and we still built an awesome team. Like, lots of wide receiver firepower. So understanding each site is very different. That's the game. You have to understand that. And that's why I'm constantly talking about the wide receiver thing or whatever on Underdog. But I actually build probably more hyperfragile teams on DK than anyone would ever guess. And I draft more early running backs probably than people would ever guess on DraftKings because I don't get punished for it. When I can get Will Fuller in the 10th round and I can get Rondale Moore in the 13th round and Terrace Marshall in the 14th round, I don't get punished for taking Gibson CEH and for taking Henderson and for taking Swift. So this is the answer to the test. Yeah, I like Sermon. I like Sermon RB2 and 4 actually. Well, so this would if you have Gibson CEH, or earlier, I would probably like 4. I'm trying to think about Henderson. I still think Henderson, Hendo, Sermon. I think I would use in a Henderson, Sermon start at running back. I think I would just ensure if I wanted to have 4, I would ensure that my third is maybe a little higher quality than if I took an earlier RB1. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think I had, we should all whip out our Henderson exposures. See who's biggest. Kidding. And I had about 20% Henderson. It was gosh, I'm trying to think back now. It was about 20% on Underdog and a shade more on DraftKings of Henderson. He actually went later. Henderson went a little later on DraftKings. It was awesome. But from before the Akers injury. Now Henderson's actually one of my highest owned players, but that's because I've been trying to. I thought we were getting I got some 6th round Henderson in the puppy 2. And then in this DraftKings $5, I think Henderson is like one of the biggest edges. So he ends up being one of my highest exposure players, but it's really only about 20% from before in the other contests. God, Paul, this is exactly my struggle. What to do in your friends and family, your home leagues after you've done all these, you've galaxy brained yourself into these absurd takes in these best ball contests. And now 1 point per completion for quarterback. That can't possibly, is that the only crazy rule? Is it like full PPR? Are there bonuses for these other positions? Otherwise, per completion. Let me think about this. I mean, you got to get one of the elite. Josh Allen, Kyler, right? Josh Allen and Kyler got to be. Mahomes, obviously, but I kind of like Josh Allen and Kyler even maybe more. Let's see. Good Lord, man. Is that like Best Ball Mania 2, like before the Akers injury? You have 40% Henderson? Worked out. I agree. I need to see what I'm working. I need to see how many people have him with CMC, how many people, right? Let's get everybody. We need those people to post all their teams so we can see what are we working against here, because we already know that it's a behemoth. Good Lord, man, 40% Henderson. You're sitting pretty, brother. All right, full PPR, 3 wide receivers and a flex. Yeah, top. Yeah, you gotta get one of the QBs. This is also true. Alex, do you think? Have you noticed? This is what I've noticed. Hawkinson is typically the one that falls, I feel like that's weird. Andrews, I would think, would be the one that would fall on DraftKings, but I've noticed that it's Hawkinson that tends to be the guy that's falling, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like the reason Hawkinson is valuable is through volume, which makes him more valuable on DraftKings, and I keep seeing him fall on DraftKings. So I'm ending up getting more Hawkinson on DraftKings, less on Underdog. But I agree. The pick 80. I'm not even like that bullish on Hawkinson, but yeah, Yahtzee. DraftKings is funny. Yep. It's weird dynamic, right? Logan Thomas goes away, which I guess it does make sense that Logan Thomas goes earlier on a full PPR site, but Logan Thomas, Tunyon, even Fant, those guys go earlier on DraftKings, but Hawk keeps falling. It's so strange. So I'm kind of using that to get my Hawkinson exposure. Yeah, this too. I keep getting a lot of Kittle. And you also get a lot of Kittle with, like, when you have a top, like you said, a top 4 pick or something like that, because you get them, top 4, top 5, whatever. You have lots of CMC, Dalvin, or, once I get to 3, I take Kelsey or one of the wide receivers. You get Kittle coming back. I keep getting pressed with this galaxy brain, like, will Pitts fall to me? Question, which he doesn't as much on DraftKings. Pitts doesn't fall as much on DraftKings, but I keep getting pressed with that idea. Maybe it's a little bit of rollover from Underdog, but like, if Pitts can, like, I don't want only those structures where I get Waller or Kittle at the early third. It's like, well, then I can also take CD or McLaurin or Keenan or A-Rob or whatever. And then if Pitts falls to the late 4, I want a little bit of that built into my portfolio too. So this is where we're at in the off season. I mean, my mind is warped from these absurd thought experiments. But any other questions before we wrap? Bunch of Panther stacks, beautiful. I just posted the top stacks on Spike Week today under the draft guides. Panthers are one of them. A lot of good perks to Panther stacks. They are a really, really, really exciting offense with exciting pieces at reasonable prices with a cheap quarterback and added perks of, if you don't have CMC, there's potential leverage on what could be, the unicorn of the year. Really like the Panthers. Tomorrow, I'll be back. Don't have a confirmed guest yet, but 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central to do a draft. And then Friday, the new schedule, the new Friday show at the same time. I'll be drafting on Drafters. I want to make sure I'm getting in all of these sites and you guys can see in real time, kind of the differences between all these sites. Till then, spikeweek.com. I'm trying to get every single thing under the draft guides up as quickly as I can. But until then, this was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Go pour another drink. Enjoy the rest of your evening. My dogs are going literally crazy, so it's the perfect time to sign off. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.